Hello and welcome to the full moon in Scorpio live broadcast. I am your astrologer, Cawnawyn Mor, and today I am joined by whoever wants to join us online live today to talk about the full moon forecast, to talk about the chart, as well as my lovely Blue Hour subscribers with me in the Zoom room, where I will give some live readings to a few lucky participants once this stream has concluded. So, welcome. Today we're talking about the Scorpio full moon occurring on May 1st, 2026. This will be around 10:23 a.m. Pacific time. I myself am located in Seattle, and this is going to be at 11 degrees of Scorpio. So, wherever you have 11 degrees of Scorpio in your chart, this is where the moon will be for this full moon, the sun being at 11 degrees of Taurus in a sun moon opposition, thus creating the full moon. So, let's dive into the chart. Okay, you should see the chart above. Here we have our moon up in Scorpio at that 11 degrees, creating that opposition to the sun in Taurus. And so, with this moon, the first thing I'm going to do is talk about this axis. And really, whenever I think about the Taurus Scorpio axis being amidst Taurus season, we are in an axis of security. This both of these signs want to feel secure. Taurus by means of their resources, by means of their time, the energy spent. Taurus cannot be rushed. Taurus is able to cultivate and to grow and to create an environment and create a place of pleasure and a place of existence that feels abundant and luscious and wonderful. And so with Taurus season, we're all being invited to step into this place of our own pacing and our own cultivation of what does it mean to feel pleasure, to be in abundance. This is a Venus ruled sign, and she's asking us to cultivate the earth in such a way that we can see what can grow from it with time and with patience. And of course, when we're able to do that, when we're all able to grow our own resources and grow, an environment around us that feels like it can take care of us and we can exist peacefully in that space. I always think of like the Empress card where she's at. Whenever we have Taurus season, Venus is inviting us to do that same process so that way we might feel more secure. And so that's creating that security of resource, right? Security of time and energy. And then I have my mouse over here on the Scorpio full moon. And Scorpio really needs to feel secure in an emotional way. This is creating a deep bond, right, with somebody. And Scorpio, when it offers itself, it doesn't do so lightly. There's a lot of protection around Scorpio, which is necessary. Unfortunately, Scorpio, the soul came in here to really participate life in the fullest. And often that can mean with Scorpio, there is a sense of being exposed to things or having to undergo life lessons and challenges that do create a sense of psychological trauma in some way. They're not afraid of going into the dark, mostly because the dark has met them in some fashion in their lifetime. And so when they create emotional bonds with others, this comes with a lot of trust, and they need a lot of that security in order to form that bond. But oh, there's nothing so unshakable. And sometimes they can get rather possessive over that bond because they invest so much of themselves into that space and they merge so completely into that like strengthened bond together. Like there's no other better word I think of than bond when I think of Scorpio. And so creating that emotional relational security, and then also with that, right, understanding Scorpio is very intuitive in understanding the power dynamics. They're able to see others moving through their actions and creating the structures in which like power dynamics are there. Why? Scorpio has probably been wounded in some way by somebody like having power over them. And so they're acutely aware of those power dynamics within an environment. Who might target me? Who do I maybe have power over? How can I manipulate and sway? And this isn't always meant to be in a way that's, um, I would say in a way that's meant to be negative or like, manipulative. Sometimes, of course, Scorpio can go there. That's the shadow side of Scorpio. But oftentimes it is truly a means of protection and not just for themselves, but those that they've built that emotional bond with. So they're very, very protective. They are loyal to a fault, right? And so what are they creating? The emotional security. So right now we have this axis of security really highlighted in the sky. What does a full moon create? First of all, it's a sun moon opposition. So we on Earth are actually right in between this full moon, this happening tomorrow morning in Pacific time. And so the sun's light, that vitality, that, space of shining and identity and, the great spotlight of our universe is shining upon the moon. So while we might have been in this level of creating maybe that resourceful security or allowing ourselves to be patient and grow and cultivate and really pay attention to our present world, this Scorpio moon is asking us to look deeper and perhaps look at things that we really don't want to look at. Taurus is a Venus sign. It would be very happy existing in the luscious abundance that this earth has to offer and to be in a sweet relational, place of like, let's grow and build and create together and exist in beauty. That is what Venus is calling us to do and really be present in that beauty, which is a beautiful thing. But unfortunately, this world brings us polarity. And so we're met with that opposite. And Scorpio full moon is here to remind us that all of that beauty, all of that cultivation and growth, and that being present can't come at the ignorance of what is left in the shadow and what we are choosing not to look at, not to participate in, not to speak up or bring awareness to. And Scorpio illuminates that place in us that we have to look at that maybe we're a little fearful of. This is why I believe some modern astrologers have attributed Pluto to be Scorpio's ruler in a modern sense. I personally use Mars as the ruler, and we're going to take a closer look at Mars in a moment. But the Scorpio being ruled by Pluto, Pluto creates that sense of fear and dread and doom because Pluto is what lurks in the dark. We can't see what lies in the closet, but we feel intuitively something is there. And I think that's where that psychological edge of Scorpio is, where, sometimes we're not even quite aware of what lies in our unconscious patterns or what lies in the future might feel very impending and scary. And Scorpio is here to remind us that that has a place too, and that we can't just go through life ignoring it and existing on some sort of surface level where everything is about our pleasure. It adds that layer of depth. It adds the layer of complexity. And so I ask you, because we're dealing with an opposition, this is often going to show up in relationship. We're being confronted with this in the outside world. So are you being confronted with these Scorpio themes right now, where the outside world is presenting something to you that feels scary or unsettling or uncomfortable, or maybe really strikes fear in your heart in some way? Or perhaps you're having to confront an aspect of yourself that feels like the shadow. Has that come up for you? And maybe because we're dealing with an opposition, this can often be triggered by or initiated by somebody in the outside world or a world event of some kind, something outside of our physical body. But as we know, as above, so below, as it happens on the external, it is also teaching us on the internal plane. So what are you observing right now that might be putting you into contact with this? Now, of course, there's a flip side to this, right? Perhaps you have been in this Scorpio place because, quite frankly, the world that we live in right now offers us a plethora of complexity and horror and psychological trauma and depth and complexity and puzzles and secrecy and conspiracy. Like, my goodness, there's no shortage of it, right? So, what is the sun reminding us in this? The sun is reminding us to be present, to recognize the environment around us, and that we, by focusing on certain things, are cultivating the very environment that we're living in. So, perhaps if you're coming from this Scorpio placement of being kind of stuck in that insulated, I'm, potentially the victim of something, or I'm afraid of something, or I've been, self-loathing myself into punishment for something that I'm ashamed of. The sun in Taurus is also reminding us to be present in our current environment and not to forget to grow that space and to shine that light on what is beautiful within our own life and to see and to act in accordance with our own gratitude, right, of the space that we've created. So they're both here to strengthen each other. I truly believe as an astrologer that the polarities are here to teach us not to find some sort of perfect crystalline balance between the two, but to teach us what happens when we ebb and flow between these axes of power, right? Both of these placements are integral to our existence as humans, and they're here to teach us. And so we can't just get stuck on one side or the other. They're meant to inform us, and it is up to us to bring that together in the form of like a tide or a balancing scale. Balance is movement. And so we're creating this balance between these two spaces. And I invite you to reflect on where those energies are showing up for you, either on an external plane or maybe happening reflective on an internal plane for yourself. Now, let's take a look at the ruler. There's a really interesting piece with this rulership in the Scorpio moon. So, if we look at the ruler of Scorpio, we have Mars here, and Mars is in Aries. Mars loves to be in Aries. This is Mars' home. So, while that might seem wonderful, what does Mars in Aries add in terms of flavor to the Scorpio moon? Mars is not aspecting the Scorpio moon right now, but because Mars is this ruler and it's kind of sandwiched between this Neptune and Saturn placement in early Aries that we just lived through all of the Mars Saturn together. And then it's about, well, it's actually, it's been surpassed by Mercury. So Mercury has moved ahead, and look at that. It's conjunct Chiron right here. Mars will meet up with Chiron in a little bit. So with Mercury, Chiron together, and then Mars stuck here in the middle, we've all been hearing, astrologers have been talking about for weeks, so much energy in Aries. And we have this Aries Mars where it's at home, where it is decisive and bold and risk-taking and overt and brave and maybe brash and a little too blunt and honest at times. That Mars is the one operating this. So perhaps is actually symbolized by that are like knives that cut, that dissect and open and pierce. So perhaps whatever this influence might have been in your life could have felt like being pierced by something. The very act of Mars doing that, right? I was just warned that my internet is a little wonky, so hopefully we're all with me. Just stick with me here, and hopefully my signal comes back. Anyway, thank you for your patience with that. So Mars being that penetrative force, right? Maybe it's something that is just kind of stuck in your mind. Scorpio can even get a little obsessive in that way. So maybe something feels like it's festering in the background and it won't quit bugging you. Something just to be aware of too, right? Mars and Aries being that sign of heat and dry. This could come in the form of, depending on your house placement, if you have this in one of your health houses, like say the sixth house or the first house or the 12th house. This could be something physical that is showing up, that is manifesting as sort of a penetrative or heat-like source or irritation. So just be mindful of that with this full moon, and you don't want to let those things go ignored, because Mars, when it creates that acute symptom, we want to make sure we treat that and potentially, use this Scorpio Taurus axis as a means of treating that thing, maybe bringing in some more energy of Venus, or bringing in some energy of letting that Mars water like move through us a little bit. Okay. So Mars being that ruler, what I think is so interesting, it's actually not showing up on this chart. I don't have my minor aspects, but what's so interesting to me is at the moment of this full moon, we have Mars, the traditional ruler of Scorpio, in a quintile. So this is approximately 72 degrees that Mars is going to create this with Pluto. And some modern astrologers attribute Pluto, as I said, to be Scorpio's rulership. And a quintile aspect is a really interesting one. It creates that five-pointed star in the chart, of course, being symbolic of all of the elements, and the pentacle, right? And so this aspect is highly genius creative, and it's kind of that creativity that seems to come from divine. So I want to open up the possibility to you that if maybe you are being penetrated or annoyed or irritated by something in this Scorpio verse, or even just this lingering sense that you're not being as present as you would like to be, what kind of creative outlet or creative solution could you maybe come up with here? Because spirit or source or deity or whoever it is that you pray to or work with on a spiritual plane, however you see that, is offering us a unique opportunity here to make meaning of this, frankly, to make meaning of whatever suffering we might be undergoing right now. And that through here, some sort of divine understanding and cognition is possible. So maybe it's going to take just a few moments of getting present, connecting with the ground, with the earth, pulling in that Taurus energy and allowing yourself to be present and to listen, to be open and receptive. In fact, receptivity is something both of these signs share in common. They're both yin signs. So how can we open to those divine messages and maybe recognize that the solution is just a little outside, what we would normally think of, and it feels divinely inspired. And this, of course, could come in the form of some sort of spiritual awakening or truth, but it could also come in the form of, I'm going to creatively move my body today, or I'm going to choose to take this opportunity and socialize with this person who means a lot to me and inspires me, or I'm going to go expose myself to a piece of art or something that I find powerful and profound that connects me with this sense of meaning. All of those things are available to us, and some profound messages may take shape through the course of this full moon. And Scorpio, being this full moon, is no less than one of the most powerful signs. It is transformative. And Scorpio is transformative on a level that is not, I went through that thing and it was memorable and I walk away and I feel good. Scorpio is transformative in that when you look back at the transformation, you will never be the same as you were when this began. So, do you want to take that opportunity? Do you want to step into that divine connection? It's being offered here now. And I just want to encourage that if that's something you're feeling. The last thing I want to touch on with this, because I see this as sort of echoed here, we have the Scorpio moon, and it's going to be coming into an exact trine with Jupiter. At the moment of this full moon, it's still pretty wide. We're 8 degrees away from an exact trine. But as we go through the course of the day, the moon, of course, will join up with Jupiter in Cancer. And Jupiter being exalted in Cancer, now moving forward, having made lots of different aspects to all of these Aries planets, including upcoming a square to Mars in just a couple of days. Jupiter is absolutely making his presence known here. And in Cancer, where he is exalted, I really think of this as sort of that generous king figure who has wealthy land, who has cultivated a sense of fortress and protection for his people, and who is generous and loving and caring, nurturing to his people in sort of the sovereign place. And wouldn't we all be so lucky to live in a kingdom like that with a beneficiary ruler like this, right? He's trying to offer that for everybody right now. And he's talking to this moon. And I think of this as sort of that lovely nature between Cancer and Scorpio being those sources of protection. I mean, Cancer is let me shield you, and Scorpio is frankly, let me die for you. And so they both have this like staunchly, fiercely loyal, like sense of protection of those that they love and care for. And so maybe some of that is being triggered a little bit for you, where you want to come in and protect something that you value and that you've bonded with. I will say with Jupiter, Jupiter will create the magnifying glass. So be careful of what is maybe distorted here. Do we need to go to extremes to create a level of protection? Do we need to dive head first into a level of nurturing and care in such a way where maybe it feels overbearing? Because that can happen with Jupiter sometimes. But Jupiter is also, because it's creating that magnifying glass, it's asking us to expand into that awareness and into that action. So maybe this feels a little bit more than you're used to, or you're stretching yourself just a little bit to even conceptualize or think of what that action could be in order to nurture or protect. And Jupiter's offering us this lovely trine, meaning that it's in harmony with the moon, of stepping into that place and trusting, yes, I am capable. Yes, I can do that. Yes, I can step into that level of protection, or yes, I can bond that deeply. Even even if it hurts, I can make meaning of that, okay? So Jupiter Jupiter is here just putting the magnifying glass on all of those really deep emotional spaces. And in the next few days, when we have this ruler of the moon come into contact via square with Jupiter, when we have Mars Jupiter square, this creates such an incredible amount of force. And we have Aries and Cancer together. So these are two cardinal signs. They are initiatory, they start things. So maybe in the next few days, you really feel that square energy of propulsion, of action towards starting something new, starting a new habit, a new pattern, a new mode of thinking, belief system, of course, with Jupiter being activated, and something that initiates you into putting this into embodied action, not just thinking about it, not obsessing over it, not setting it aside where you don't want to look at it anymore. Something about this is highly motivating. Remember what I said about Jupiter being a magnifying glass and creating some sense of extreme, because Mars talking to Jupiter in that way, especially Mars in Aries, it wants what it wants and it's going to go for it full force. So be mindful of your energy. Remember, you don't have to throw out everything or just jump head first in without with reckless abandon. you want to be mindful of where is that energy going, how much you're putting into that, what is feasible, what is realistic, right? We want to stay a little bit grounded here, maybe tapping back into that present source of Taurus of like, I'm going to give myself the patience, like it doesn't all have to get done tomorrow. I can pace this out. It's happening as it's meant to. I really think that this Taurus sun season right now is offering us such wisdom in taking it slow, taking our time. There's so much Aries energy still in the sky. And I didn't even cover all of it, and I'm not going to today because we're focused on the moon, but can we just take that breath and that step back and get grounded and recognize it's all happening as it's meant to? Okay, so that is going to be my interpretation today for this chart so far. Of course, there are other elements here. So if anybody has any questions, I'd love to open it up to both my room, my Zoom room. Hello, wonderful subscribers. Thank you for joining me over here. And then if there's anybody still over on YouTube watching the live broadcast, happy to answer questions as well. And I'll give it just a couple moments. I'm also very curious if any of this is resonating too. If you want to share your stories over in the Zoom room, I'd be so curious. Nobody? Happening near Pluto in your chart, would that mean? Thank you, Emily. I appreciate that question. So Pluto, right, is considered one of those modern rulers. And of course, our whole Pluto and Scorpio generation. So this is going to be everybody born in those kind of early 90s. I think some of the late 80s have the Pluto and Scorpio as well. And so, yeah, this is highlighting your Pluto placement. If we think back to the beginning of what I was talking about with Pluto's rulership, that which we fear, those things inside of us that we don't want to look at, it's kind of the closet we stick all our skeletons in. So, something about this moon awakening that space within us. Now, granted, the house position of your Pluto, so go see what house it's in, might give some clue as to where some of that karmic transformation is still needing to occur. This moon is absolutely integrated with that. If we think about what this moon is, right, the full moon, the sun is not only casting its light on the moon, but now it's on your Pluto. So this is your personal trunk of secrets, right? And so what I would say is this is offering a really unique opportunity to shine a light in that area, maybe do some form of reflection or shadow work, maybe some sort of divination to bring in symbols so we can detach from our ego from sun, right, from the sun's light, and step into a place of receptivity of, I'm going to allow these messages from my deep subconscious, maybe my karmic patterns to show up. And we're going to step into that bravely and see what arises. And does it strike fear? Does it strike guilt or shame? These are all emotions that Pluto kind of hides in life. It'll bring up those karmic lessons and patterns, those struggles against power that we have throughout the course of our life. And so, everybody with this Pluto and Scorpio, this moon is going to talk to your Scorpio in one way or another. Now, if you have it in the first early 10 degrees, that full moon aspect isn't lit up yet, but we're in it right now. So, you're likely already feeling it. And then at all those later degrees, after the moon goes exactly full, at this time at 11 degrees, the moon's full phase will be crossing over all those, just emphasizing further that interaction in the outer world with whatever that place is. So it may not even be necessary for you to do some form of shadow work or divination on your own, but what I want to invite you is what an opportunity to let yourself control that process of looking at your Scorpio Pluto, which is, well, I mean, Pluto's quite comfortable in Scorpio, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's warm and cozy in there. It's kind of in its like gothic library of secrets, right? And in its power. But, we haven't opened those books in quite some time. And some of those journals have a bit, of tender pieces in there. And so when we're looking at those places in our life, it can feel really tender. And this is an opportunity to take the initiative and choose how you're going to interact with that, and thus how you're going to transform that Pluto story in your life. I hope that helped answer that question. And Runa, I see your question. Jupiter sextiling Pluto. Yeah, and I'm wondering if you have that natally or if you have that via like Jupiter right now is sextiling your Pluto. Just something to keep in mind with Jupiter. Jupiter will always be a magnifying glass. And so it's going to blow up that image of Pluto in this case, whether it be natal or transit. And so if it's your Jupiter doing that, then that's kind of creating that sense. Okay, thank you very much for saying that. Yeah, so your Jupiter in Aries sextiling natal Pluto. Yes, okay. So when that happens, right, Jupiter magnifies and it creates this distortion where it feels like Pluto is right in our face. And so we're constantly coming up against that karmic story, against that pattern, against those places that we kind of wish we didn't have to look at. Pluto is representative of some sort of psychological manipulation or trauma. This can be something that, was acted upon us in early life, but also can be how we ourselves are magnetic and manipulate the power structures in our own life. Jupiter is really magnifying that. Now, sextile, that's a nicer aspect in some respects, right? I think of this as the collaborative handshake aspect. And so they're offering gifts to each other. And I really see that as Jupiter inviting us into this expansion of recognizing our own power and not giving it away to these subconscious patterns. It's making it in our face so we can't ignore it. And thus we can't give our power away to it blindly. So that's what I would say about that, especially with Jupiter and Aries. This is about taking that radical ownership, being risky, being brave, staring our demons right in the face and saying, I'm going to do it anyway. All right. Well, I don't see any more questions from my YouTube. Oh my goodness, beautiful. Thank you for sending in, yes, your stories. And I can't wait to read more of these in my Zoom room. So if you are new to this broadcast on YouTube, welcome. Please feel free to check out in my description. I have the link to sign up for my free newsletter where you can join in on the Zoom room and potentially get a natal chart reading with me every single month. Again, this is totally free, and my newsletter is called Blue Hour. I offer lots of great stuff there as well, including spells every month for the full moon and new moon meditations that I create based on the chart and much more. So I'd love to see you over there. Thank you so much, YouTube, for having me, I guess, for being this space that I can create these live streams. I'm so grateful. And if you're watching, I'd love to know where you're from and what spoke to you about this and maybe what didn't resonate as well. I'm so curious. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out the live stream. Everyone in my Blue Hour room, please stick around and we will get to our readings. Thank you so much.